Thank you. I will bring this meeting of the Joint Appropriations Committee to order, and the first item up for business is roll call.
Representative Elman. Present. Representative Angelos.
Here.
Representative Harrelson. Here. Representative Pendergraft.
Here.
Representative Sherwood.
Here.
Representative Smith.
Here.
Senator Driscoll.
Here.
Senator Garou.
Here.
Senator Larson.
Here.
Senator Smith.
Here.
Co-Chairman Bear.
Here.
Chairman Salazar.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. So the structure in which I'd like to proceed, if the co-chairman is agreeable, is I would like the chair of House Appropriations to bring forward some of his ideas, and then we would bring a couple of ours. We would then, once we bring each of our ideas to the forefront and explain them, I will open it up for public testimony, and then after that, take a final vote on the entire slate. So with that, Mr. Co-Chair, please bring us forward any ideas that you would like to address during the 2025 interim topics.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. So the first thing I would like to do, looking at our list, I would like to bring in or move that we have an interim topic which combines item number 3, which is direct distribution to local governments, with item number 10, which is distribution of sales and use tax. So I'd like to study, I'd like the committee to study how we can eliminate the budgetary item of direct distribution via working with our sales tax.
Great. Any discussion on that? Anyone? Okay, great. So let's do this. That will be your number 1, and then just continue on, Mr. Co-Chair, as to what other items you'd like to address.
Okay, I have an item that is not listed on this printout, and I'm going to describe this slowly so that you can capture this. Future funding of wildfire management. So that's future funding of wildfire management, state forester duties, and after action report. So this would be studying how we're going to structure the fund transfers to those entities that are fighting our fires. We'll do an after-action report from last summer to determine, what were the failures, what could we do better, and we would structure something for the forester's duties after that, as well as how should we be funding fire prevention and fire fighting in the state.
Okay, great. Any discussion from the Senate side about that particular idea? Senator
Mr.
Driscoll.
Chairman, I think very appropriate, considering where we're at. We're starting to resemble the federal government on fire costs. I think it's a common sense approach. Take a look at it.
Great. Any other discussion? I would agree with that comment. Please continue, Mr. Co-Chair. Oh, Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Would that include maybe forest management, as in logging?
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Yes, I think anything that falls under the duties of the forester currently, or that we deem necessary as an additional duty, I think the bills that came through this body this year, stated that there was some rulemaking that was necessary. We want to look at that, make sure that everything's working smoothly based on action we've taken this year, but also ensure we're headed in the right direction for any future conflagration.
Senator Garou.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman, for the co-chair. I'd always just, when we're talking about the duties of the forester, can I understand from that, you mean what we're asking is to have the chief executive, have his team come up and explain from their point of view what the duties are, and then have that discussion that way, since that's kind of his bailiwick. I just want to make sure that we're keeping our separation of powers straight.
Mr. Co-Chair. Thank you. Yes, Senator, we would start with, where are we at today? Is there improvements that this body could create a bill that help the executive better manage fires? Obviously, other than volunteer work, this body's probably not going to go out and start fighting fires. But I'd say that in jest, but at the same time, you know, there's been discussions on whether that department should be under the State Lands Board, or whether it should be something else. And if we're going to make a major change in the structure in the statute books, then I think we should have a serious discussion about it. Spend some time really making sure it's the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Yes, Senator Driscoll.
Just a couple comments and maybe an ask. Probably starting at the first meeting with a review of the Governor's Forest Task Force, which I don't think anybody in here hardly was around. I was on it. And net costs and effects of what we've done with forest health and the pine beetle programs, because we have antecedent evidence that that stuff returns huge returns as far as the fires. And I think that's one of the things we got to look at is preventative, not just fighting the fires, but how do we go? It goes back to the forest management, some of it. And I think that's a key part of this. Is that amicable to you?
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Co-Chair, thank you. Senator Driscoll, yes, that's amicable. I think it can be very encompassing, and I don't think it's going to be a lighthearted or short period of time to really work this. I think it's going to be involved in every meeting that we have through the interim, and I think we're going to have to really focus on it to get it right. I would also even encourage that we look at grass fire prevention with the weed control efforts that we're doing right now on cheatgrass, on Ventonata, Medusa, head. So both that out on the plains and in the mountains where we have our forests, I think is important to look at all of that.
Great. What else, Mr. Co-Chair?
I think there's some items that your body will be bringing that we'll be supportive of, but that's what we'd like to present for now.
Okay. Thank you. One of the things that I definitely, I thought I had used the website to do it, but I don't see it on here. And that's the issue of dealing with DD waivers and the increased cost, particularly the federal cost sharing versus the state level of support. And I guess my question is, are we doing enough to keep our providers in the game and taking care of that, which obviously affects so many of our folks? So that would be one of my requests, to look at DD waivers and the increased cost to providers and whether we're taking care of them. Senator Driscoll, do you have any ideas on interim topics?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Fully supportive of your DD waivers. Actually, what I'm looking at doing combines a big part of what's left on the entire list. And if you haven't numbered them, we got a YDOT stateside funding, mission impact, vertical construction, and stateside funding. And then we also have one of yours, Mr. Chairman, and one of mine that it deals with air transportation. And so we'd like to look pretty broad. We just passed 33. So it'd basically be a general YDOT. Part of it would be informational, having them come in and tell us where they're at, and then a deeper dive on where we're at on funding projects and going forward. We made a big leap forward in 33, but we know we haven't covered all the ground. How do we take a look at YDOT? It's been done many years through transportation. It may seem funny to be in approps, but sometimes a different set of eyes have a different look, and I think it's time appropriate. It's one of our big agencies to take a deep dive.
I would very much concur, Senator Driscoll, that that's an area that we definitely need to look at. And so who else? Anyone else? Senator Smith, anyone have yes, Senator Smith.
Mr. Chair, members of Appropriations, I'd like to, I put forward an idea to create a Department of Government Efficiency Exploration Committee. Basically, what we do is we'd be looking to make government more efficient, explore ways to do that, looking for inefficiencies, eliminating waste, identifying waste, and maybe even creating a way that employees that work for the state can actually reach out to like a subcommittee here and give us ideas about how we can make the government more efficient. And that's the idea.
Okay. Anything else? Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I brought the UW topic. It sounds like maybe we've been invited over to maybe the board board's meetings, and we can get a little bit more information at that time, but I think a little discussion on that would be good.
Okay, and then, Mr. Co-Chair, do you have any thoughts on the UW and the Doge issues, Mr. Co-Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. So on the Doge first, we had a discussion about this just offline a little bit, and our committee felt like management audit would probably be the right place to put that. That committee, I think, is going to be a little more focused than it's been in the past and have a little bit more authority to get some things done. And I think the example we have from the federal government right now is inspiring. I like it. I like the ideas, Senator Smith, but I just think we're getting a little widespread with our time right now, especially with the forester issue. And I'd like to see the management audit have something to really sink their teeth into. And as far as the University of Wyoming, yes, we have been invited as members, all of us, to join them as they do their budgeting process. I think that's probably really the first step to really determining whether there's a change needed, whether we want to look at the block grant model. I am very interested in that, and I personally have committed to trying to be at those meetings so that we can get a grasp of how they're working through it now and what that would be for our workload if we were to take on, like it was done in the past, where each college would bring their budget to this body. So I think the first step really is just to do some individual research and do that by showing up at their budget meetings as we've been invited.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair, I would agree with you. I think that with regard to Senator Smith's idea that management audit could easily address that issue. And as far as the UW topic on the budget, I think that I would also agree that the first step is simply meeting with those folks and seeing how the process begins so we can have a better idea and better understanding of going forward. Are there any other, yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And this is not something we discussed, but just want to float an idea. Representative Angelos and I have had many discussions, and I think everyone in the room knows that there's a concept of OBGYN desert in the state of Wyoming, and there's many theories as to why that is. And we've discussed that, the body in general, not necessarily this committee, but the body in general needs to have a better grasp of why is that? Is that something to do with our laws, with insurance? Is it something to do with what we do with our funding with Medicare and Medicaid? What is it really that is causing this desert? And I don't know that it really dovetails in with the DD waiver. It's a little bit of a different issue, but maybe we could have a little discussion about whether we could look into that as well. I don't even have an idea right now. This just came to mind as to who we would invite to try to get that information. But, our discussions were that, really there's a major pressure based on the statute of limitations for OBGYN cases. So in other words, you could be a 30-year-old and you could sue your OBGYN. So what does that do? That creates higher premiums for OBGYNs. And if there's a differential between Wyoming and other states, that probably has a much greater effect than a small increase in Medicaid funding for OBGYN services. So I'd like to really get to the bottom of what is causing this OBGYN desert. If we could find some time to get to that, there's another possibility there.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very important issue. Let's go with Senator Guru and then Senator Smith.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, just agreeing with the co-chair. I think it would be beneficial to invite some of our OBGYNs that are here to come and tell us themselves what their challenges are, what they feel their challenges are. We hear a lot of outside information on what the reason is, but hear it from them directly might be enlightening.
Senator Smith.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to propose a committee that focuses on the feasibility of a hand count system for Wyoming. I think maybe a committee that looks at maybe a county doing a single day paper ballot hand count. There's just a lot of people that are unsure or don't feel secure about our elections. And I think that this would be, we could lead the state, or lead, excuse me, we could lead the nation in, on this topic. And so I'd like to propose that.
Okay, good. Well, are we writing this down? Great, appreciate that. And then,
Mr. Chairman?
yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on
Harrelson.
that last topic,
Yes.
it's something that Representative Smith and I's district is pretty passionate about. But I will say, I think we need to be careful because I think corporations is where that's got to stay. I think if we bring it into here, I think it probably muddies the water. So I'm 100% behind it. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. It needs to be an interim topic, but I think it needs to be in good corporations committee for that conversation. So, and I'd gladly walk with you down there to have that conversation with that chairman.
so Senator Smith, would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yep, great, okay, super. Okay, so we've got some really great ideas here, and what I'm thinking, Mr. Co-Chairman, is that we have some public testimony, hear some folks, and then just after that, let's start voting and deciding if these issues are. So with that, we'll start with the agencies first. Who would like to go first on representing any agencies to come up? Yes, Director.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Committee, Darren Westby, Wyoming Department of Transportation. Again, thank you for the efforts on House Bill 33. It's going to help us move the needle going into the future, and look forward to the continued conversation on other topics YDOT related, whether it's education of what we do, why we do it, why it's so important, as well as the other issue with aeronautics funding through the capacity agreement expansion side of the House as well. It wasn't necessarily our topic. I know that Wyoming Airport Coalition submitted that, and I'm assuming Devin's online to speak on that later. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Driscoll.
Director Westby, Mr. Chairman, in order, what's the most important topics for you that we can help you deal with? Yeah, I know what our priorities are, but what in your vision is the most important as we look through, because we left ourselves really broad. What do you think will have the biggest impact on your agency if we do a deep dive on it?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thanks for the question. I think realistically, we just need to continue down the conversation of long-term sustainable funding, increased funding mechanism. Not to say that the House Bill 33 wasn't a good effort to start whittling down what our needs are. I think prioritization within the state, within our own agency as to the importance of what we do with project selection, where we're putting the funding is important, as well as, all things YDOT related. We have several things within our agency that help with the prioritization where the funding goes. And we internally are going to have to work through some of those things to ensure where they rank within the priority with our agency, as well as within the state. What is the priority of infrastructure within the state? So having those conversations, I think, is very beneficial, not just to the agency, but to the state as a whole. I think, Mr. Chairman, just to add on, I think just really having the opportunity to think differently. We're in a different time. We have to think bigger. We have to think broader. We have a lot of things that we want to accomplish and may not have the mechanism in which to get there, but we have a good vision of going forward and trying to open it up for good dialogue.
Other questions? Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we were trying to combine a little bit on these topics, and I know that Mr. Brubaker wanted to speak to this issue on public comment. I just wanted to give you a heads up on this
Okay.
before we left this topic.
Yes, well, we can go there now. So, do we have someone online? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
My name is Devin Brubaker. I'm the Airport Director for the Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport and the President of the Wyoming Airports Coalition. Appreciate the Director and Senator Grew teeing myself up for some quick comments about air service. Several members of this committee submitted and sponsored this topic, which we're greatly appreciative of. Alongside the Director and the importance of hard infrastructure for transportation across the state, we have our air service that is provided in 9 of our communities across the state. And we see that as critical infrastructure. I know many of you do as well. And we look forward to working with the director, his staff, as well as this committee to study where the state's at with air service, how the air service industry has evolved over the last 5 or 6 years since the legislature last looked at this, and looking at opportunities for continued growth, as well as looking at some past successes of the program. So, Mr. Chairman, appreciate your leadership in this area. Senator Driscoll, Representative Pendergraft, and others that sponsored this topic. Really appreciate that and look forward to working with you all in the interim. With that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brubaker. Any questions for Mr. Brubaker? Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Appreciate it. Who else? We have the State Treasurer here. Was he going to testify, or were you just enjoying the day with us?
Thank you very much for recognizing me there.
You want to come up to the microphone?
Actually, I'm thinking of things that are probably going to be kept in rather than JC.
Okay.
On this, but when you guys get done with the rest of your work, if you're still here, we can chat.
Thank you, State Treasurer. Yes, come on up, UW.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Chairman. Thank you. Mike Smith with the University of Wyoming. Just very briefly, since it was mentioned, I just want to highlight the dates for the Board of Trustees Budget Committee hearings will be May 12th and May 13th. That's a Monday and Tuesday in Laramie, and a formal invitation from the board is coming these committees, plural way, shortly later this week, but as you're planning kind of possible timeframes, just wanted to put that out there. In addition to the 2003 LSO issue brief that's highlighted in the topical area, there was a 2015 Management Audit Committee report that was prepared on this topic, and so lots out there, and always happy to have your participation in our process and have those discussions.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, who else would like to come up and? Yes, ma'am. How are you?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ashley Harpstreet, Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and I just want to thank the House Chairman for bringing up their direct distribution and distribution of sales and use tax. Since the inception of the statewide sales use tax in the 1930s, the importance of sales and use tax at a local government's financial stability cannot be overstated. So looking at a way to basically eat what we kill, we would be very interested in visiting about. Again, in 1935, it used to be a 50-50 split between state and local government. And in 2006, when the food tax became an exemption, then we went to this direct distribution model. We all know the pain is real in that ask. So we would do anything we could to help provide information and shepherd that conversation.
Great. Any questions? Any questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Who else would like to come up? Yes, please do. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jeff Gardner, representing the Wyoming Community Service Providers, and I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, your priority of looking at DD waiver rates. We are in a situation where many of our members, we represent small, medium, and large providers across the state, and the waiver rates just are not sufficient. The good news is we have a roadmap. We just finished a cost study to rebase rates that was published in September of last year, that I think this is a perfect time for this committee to take up this topic. A consultant that the state has actually used on the last 3 or 4 cost surveys looked at the costs of providing these services and what the rate should look like. So just wanted to certainly throw my support behind that and would certainly answer any questions.
Yes, I have a couple questions. So number one, Mr. Gardner, I'd like to ask you, what, in your opinion, are the 2 top priorities that you would like this committee to review this, this summer on this issue? That's my first question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think just looking at the rate structure overall, the consultant, in my opinion, did a really good job of drilling down to not just, obviously, labor costs are the large cost in any business, but drilling down into other, costs that really should be included in a cost survey and a cost study. So just, excuse me, the rate structure, I think within that, another priority would be looking at those labor-intensive services, i.e. 24-hour residential services, day services, as well as the respite services, personal care. Those are very labor-intensive, and in a lot of cases, one-on-one. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and then my last question is, do you think it would be beneficial for this committee to actually visit a facility?
Mr. Chairman, I think that would be fantastic, because every one of you have programs. If they're not, large providers with lots of brick and mortar, there are smaller providers. I would absolutely encourage that. I think seeing what you're paying for is critical.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who else would like to come forward? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan Downing on behalf of Wyoming Petroleum Marketers Association. Just rising in support of the discussion as far as WYDOT. A long history of, as far as some of our members and others working to ensure that you have the full picture of the needs of that transportation system. I also think just personally, the DOGE approach, it'd be nice to dust off some of those pieces. When the Government Efficiency Task Force had met years ago, one of the discussions had been overpass versus underpass. Are there other ways with cable guardrails like you see on I-25 South here to have a lower cost alternative for improving highway safety? And well, it's been about a decade since I've touched some of those issues directly. You would see a savings back then. It was for every 100 million spent, you'd have over 170 lives saved over a 10-year period. And so as we look at the cost of not doing things versus doing things and how we prioritize those, I know our members are committed to being helpful in supporting that, bringing other ideas that they've seen in other parts of the country. And with that, also with Director Westby having that great engineering background, you've definitely seen some improvement within the agency under his leadership.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Downing. Any questions from Mr. Downing? Anyone? Okay, thank you so much. I think you were next, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kelly Little. I'm with the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming. Just going to echo what Mr. Downing said. We are here standing in support of the topics related to WYDOT. We really think a holistic, overarching review of how our transportation system is funded is definitely needed, and something that we're looking forward to participating in as the boots on the ground as it goes on our highways. So looking forward to working with you all, and I will take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Little. Any discussion, any questions? Thank you, Ms. Little. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim McGagnon with the Wyoming Stockholders Association. Want to offer our strong support to you taking up the subject of fire prevention, fire control, duties of state forester, particularly like the way you broaden that topic, because I think that whole area needs to be looked at carefully, and be happy to work with you on that. I would suggest, because at least currently the The state forester is under the jurisdiction of the State Loan Investment Board, and that has normally fallen under jurisdiction of the Joint Ag Committee, that you would find a way to involve the Joint Ag Committee in this process as well. I think leadership from both committees would be very helpful on that topic. Second, Mr. Chairman, it wasn't mentioned, so perhaps it's not high on your list, but I note the topic on here, the cloud seeding program. I just had the opportunity to spend this last weekend over in Sublette County meeting with the ranching community over there. When I mentioned that there was some question about continuing cloud seeding, why it was brought to my attention quickly that they view having that ability as being critical in that area of the state, the southern end of the Wind Rivers, particularly as we've seen these years of less moisture in that, and that's been an important tool for them. They've been able to work with other states and get some funding in there to share in the costs of that, and would hope that we can keep that as a viable program moving forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Thank you, appreciate it. Yes, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Richard Garrett. I'm here excuse me. I'm here today representing the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, and at my age, I should know better than to try to follow Jim Magagna, because largely I'm just going to repeat what he said. But the topic that Chairman Bear has suggested about wildfire prevention fighting is critical to the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which our organization is devoted to helping to protect. And it's not just about habitat and wildlife, but it's about our tourism economy as well. So I applaud Chairman Bear for bringing the subject, and I hope that you members will encourage Management Council to allow you to further explore it. Certainly a big issue in the northeast corner of the state where Senator Driscoll comes from as well. So thank you.
Okay, great. Any questions? Any questions? Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Anyone else before we close public testimony? Anyone else? Okay, I'll close it. Mr. Richards, I guess what I'd like to do is, can you go over, or whoever was taking the notes, what we had talked about that it was of interest to the Joint Committee on addressing this summer?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you have item number 1 is a combination of direct distribution for local governments and sales and use tax distribution. Item number 2 is wildfire management and work of the state forester. Item number 3 is DD waivers and potential for cost sharing. Item number 4 is a holistic view of YDOT funding. Item number 5 and 6, I believe, were removed. That is the Department of Government Efficiency, potentially moving that to the management audit. And item number 6, University of Wyoming budgeting, possibly interest of individual members in attendance at the Board of Trustees. And then finally, you had a look at what is being referred to as OBGYN availability, or the desert in services related to that. And finally, I also believe item number 8 was removed and redirected to the Corporations Committee on the feasibility of paper ballot hand counts.
Great, great. Mr. Richards, you have a lot of new members on this Joint Appropriations Committee. Given the number of mandates that we were allowed or are allowed under Management Council, is that a workable list of topics that could be accomplished during our time this summer?
Mr. Chairman, if you're asking for my thoughts on this, it is a budget session that you are leading into. So you do have other statutory duties that you would complement the interim work with, including hearing reports such as the October Craig report. You will also benefit from not having any discussion on the ECA if in fact we move forward with the recalibration, because that, and that is a full meeting, could be removed. But let's say you end up with 5 is what I'm hearing, topics. I think that would be perhaps the maximum amount, and it would be certainly a full schedule.
And right now, we do have 5. So right now, we're looking at the limit of what we could successfully accomplish.
Mr. Chairman, that's my observation.
Okay. Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I think going into our discussions with Management Council with the maximum is probably a good idea, because some of these do have some crossover with other committees, and that the Management Council may remove one or two of these or ask us to work with another committee. So I think going into that meeting with 5 would be a wise choice for us.
I would agree.
Including, the OBGYN desert, we didn't talk about this, but that could easily end up in labor health.
Right, right. Okay, I guess what I would like to do is hear from the committee if there is anything that you have heard that you would like removed. And if not, perhaps we could get some type of a informal vote as to the topics that we have agreed on. So is there anyone on the Joint Appropriations Committee that has heard a topic that feels that either they don't want to hear about it or they don't think it's appropriate that we discuss? Is there a motion to, yes, Mr. Co-Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I move that we vote just on all of this as a consent
Single item,
agenda.
yeah. Okay, so we have a
All 5
motion.
items.
Is there a second? There is a second. Any discussion? All those in favor with regard to the topics that have been brought forward as a starting point of where we're going to go this summer on the interim topics, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried. Any other business, Mr. Richards, before us?
No, Mr. Chairman. Based upon historic action, I would prepare, or we would prepare the memo and get that approval from the co-chairs for submission to Management Council.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, I will adjourn the meeting.